Welcome to DAExMachiNation. Join us as we explore the mysteries of this world. Cryptids, monsters, macabre tales, and horror stories abound. Could they be true? Are monsters real?
Good evening, folks, and thank you all for joining us on another edition of DAExMachiNation. We got a full house tonight. Everything is already packed. We're just now getting started. A lot of folks in the house. The chat is just flying. Got a lot of the old regulars in here, and some new faces I haven't seen before. But I wanted to say welcome to each and every one of you guys, and thank you guys for being with us. For, at least for the moment, hashtag DAExMachiNation rules, and we'll be changing. As you all know, we'll be changing the name. Rebranding here shortly, but we're still working on the intro and outro. Joining me in the house tonight is Robbie Rip Rains or Robbie Jed Rains, whichever you prefer. Doc and Steve won't be here tonight. They both had to work, unfortunately, but hopefully they'll both be back with us on Saturday night. Robbie, how the hell you doing, brother?
Doing good. How are you?
I'm good. Keeping busy. I got some good news on the book front.
Well, let's have it.
Not only do I finally found an artist who's currently working on the cover, I'm at 72,000 words on Dead of Winter, and I should finish it tonight. I just have the final, what I call the wrap-up chapter. If you know what my books, there's a prologue, the story, and then there's a wrap-up chapter where everybody kind of meets at either Steve's Pub and Grub or something like that. I just have the wrap-up chapter left to do, and the book is done.
Good deal.
And you're cruising right along on book 3.
Yep, I just hit 25,000 words or so, or over 25,000 words.
That's freaking awesome, brother. You're turning into a freaking machine. Proud of you.
Just call me Bert.
So what's new in your neck of the woods?
Do what?
What's new in your neck of the woods? I heard there might be some Bigfoot activity not far from you.
Rodney sent me a link on something today. Somewhere down around Camden or in that area. Rodney, if you're in the chat,
he's in the chat. I saw him.
Somewhere down in the middle part of the state or to the lower part of the state. Some people were having some daylight sightings and some activity and some things like that. They made a post in the same group that we got the howl from.
Mm-hmm.
They'd made a post in that group, and they had said that they were willing to have somebody from the BFRO come down. They'd show them around. And so I sent them a message and said, was it just BFRO or can independent investigators come take a look? So I'm just kind of waiting for a call back from that. I'd kind of like to, and somebody had said that they knew the area that they were talking about and said it was really, really rural. And there was a lot of acreage around it. So it was very possible that what they were talking about was true. So,
well, I've got some interesting news on our end of it too. Eric, AD Testerman, he messaged me the other day, and he's been digging, same as we have, looking for more of those abandoned campgrounds. And we found another one up on Truman Lake. And him and I are planning on going up there and having a look at it. But here's the kicker. Like right after he texted me that, I had an email from a guy. He's like, hey, I don't care if you use my story on the air. Just don't mention my name because I'm with the Highway Patrol. He said, I got your email from a buddy of mine, and I thought I'd pass this on. He said, I was patrolling up near Truman Lake. And he says, broad daylight. And this thing walks across the road in front of my car. And he says, the only thing I can say is it was not a person in a suit. This thing had to be all of 8 feet tall, and it crossed the road in 3 steps. I said, you have your dash cam running? He said, no, unfortunately. He said, my lights, I was just driving. He said, I didn't have the dash cam on. He said, but I wish I would have caught it. But at the same time, had I caught it, they probably would have confiscated the video. He said he's not the first highway patrolman to see one up near Truman Lake either. So that just like perfect timing to go along with what Eric was saying.
You might want to tell him though, he may not know this, and I know the only reason I know this for a fact.
If you activate your lights, it backs up like 30 seconds. And I don't think he really wanted that to have physical evidence, though.
Maybe not, but
That's the kind of thing that'll get you transferred to a really crappy district. Of course, patrolling up near Truman Lake, probably not much worse in the state he could get sent to, short of St. Louis.
That's true.
I'd rather patrol near Truman Lake than St. Louis, I can tell you that. But that area is extremely rural. I mean, thick woods, 3 lakes within a short distance of each other. You got Truman Lake, Palm de Terre Lake, and Lake of the Ozarks, all right there that just run together. Well, actually, they're, you know how Table Rock Lake has the dam and then it flows into Lake Taneycomo?
Yeah.
All 3 of those lakes do that too. Truman flows into Palm de Terre that flows into Lake of the Ozarks.
That's kind of a ongoing theme up there with that too. I wonder if that's
man-made lakes.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, Eric said there's no explanation. Army Corps of Engineers didn't say shit. They just shut it down. So maybe this weekend. Well, shit, I can't this weekend because we got the show on Saturday, and Sunday's my birthday, so I'm going to be spending some time with the family. I'll be the double nickels this year, the big 55.
Yep.
Feel old. But I do want, if Eric's off on Friday, maybe we can get up there. I'll have to message him because I definitely don't want to go alone, and Noah works so much crazy hours. It's hard for me to get him out in the woods with me. But if you and Doc were here, you can bet your ass we'd be going to Truman Lake and having a look. There's an old abandoned Boy Scout camp up there somewhere too. I've heard about it for years, never been able to find it, and I can't find somebody who lives in that area who can show me exactly where it is. But I've had several people say, yeah, there's an old Boy Scout camp up there that's been gated off for 25, 30 years, and the place is just falling down. He said, you could still get in there. You got to walk in, but the buildings are all falling in on themselves. But it's been closed a long time. There was an old camp up on the other side of Lebanon too. If I remember correctly, when I was a kid, what I was told is it was an old Girl Scout camp. And I know right where it's at, but last time I was up there, there was really no structures left standing. They'd all pretty much imploded.
Well, you think about it. We didn't know that there was a structure at Combs Ferry until we went back out there during the day. We walked right by it.
Yeah. That's how thick the undergrowth is at Combs Ferry. Thank you, Wendell. Thank you, Irene. Yeah, I'll be 55 this weekend. I feel it. It ain't the years, it's the mileage.
Yeah. That's what I love.
Hey, what's up, brother?
Who's that?
So next time we can get you and Doc in the state, I think we got some. Well, I've got at least 3 brand new places I haven't been in yet that I want to take you guys. One of them I haven't been in because I'm not going without a group smaller with a group smaller than 5 or 6 guys, and they're all going to have to be armed because it's some woolly territory where I'm wanting to go. And if that was the one that was the one I was telling you about, where allegedly the Conservation Department exchanged fire with the thing. Mrs. Moon says Girl Scout camp I went to was abandoned and taken down in the 90s. Where was that at? Thanks, Steve. Appreciate it, brother.
Dang, we're already up to 133. We're
moly.
Under 15 minutes in. That folks is awesome.
That is awesome. Guess what I did yesterday, actually.
What'd you did?
Lieutenant Jenkins wanted me to go to the range with him. So me and Noah grabbed a bunch of pistols that we hadn't shot in a while and loaded up a crap load of ammo and met up with Lieutenant Jenkins, and we went out to range out by Billings, Missouri. You got to be a member of the range. It's a really nice range. So Jenkins Jenkins brought some of his toys that I hadn't got to shoot yet. The first one I got to shoot, I will post some pictures on Facebook of the actual full round, but this is the brass. This is from a 500 Smith & Wesson Magnum. And I shot that thing, and man, that beast has got some kick. Holy smoke.
In the immortal words of Scott from Kentucky Ballistics, she be kicking.
Well, I fired. I ran the full cylinder, and we shot a video. If you watch the video when we can get it clean, when we get it edited and posted, when we watch the video, my first round with it, that the thing just kicks up like that. And you hear me go, "Jesus Christ!" And then right after that, I shot, and I'll hold them up side by side so you can see both of them. This one, the Desert Eagle 50.
Oh,
and shockingly, I think the DE 50 kicked harder than the 500 Magnum.
Well, it depends on what kind of load and what grains you were shooting out of each one of them. Because Scott, actually, his latest video, funny enough that you should mention.
Yeah, Jenkins sent that to me because it was this. Yeah. It posted the same day we were out shooting those. He was comparison of the two.
Yeah,
which is badass.
He was using a 350 grain, and there was 100%. It was without a doubt that 500 Magnum was kicking way harder than the Deagle. The rise on the barrel was just like at least 3 inches higher than it was on the Deagle.
Let me see if I can upload one of the videos. Give me just a second. No, I've got it. Just got to see if it's there and ready to load, or if it's small enough to actually upload here on the channel. Come on, I know you're there. Oh, okay. The other one is on Noah's phone. This was the video of me is on his phone, and this is video of Noah on that I shot on my phone. So, you guys ready? Check this out. This is Noah shooting. I believe it's the Desert Eagle. This is another one of those ones where I just gotta kind of hit the guy, right? Oh. Let's see what you mean by the brass hitting you in the head. God dang! The flame goes off. The flame goes out of frame.
Dang, that brass like it's about to knock his head off.
When I was shooting it, the brass was bouncing off my melon too. Fortunately, I had a hat on, so it wasn't like burning my scalp. But we got videos of me shooting that and the 500. We'll post those up. I think I've even got a picture of that full size the full size round. Let me see. Okay. Here we go. Give me just a second. I got to find it. I got so many freaking images in this file. I need to clean them out. Sorry, folks. There's a million of these damn things. I really need to do better file maintenance. Everything's just in one big folder.
We all got those problems.
Well, I'm terrible about it. I really need to get a lot better. Now, there's pictures of Noah shooting the flamethrower. Oh, here we go. Found it. Okay. Now, I've got some pretty good sized meat hooks. My hands are not small. That's the 500 Magnum.
Yeah, that's a good size chunk of lead.
That's a pretty big pew pew. And I was genuinely surprised. I thought it would kick harder than it did. Jenkins said there's some rounds that really kick like a mule, but even with it just being the target rounds in a 500 Magnum, I expected it to dang near hit me in the forehead. But I guess I've spent so much trigger time in my life that recoil doesn't get me like it does a lot of people. But I was still like, Jesus Christ! The first time I shot that thing, flame went out like 3 feet out of the barrel. Northwood says a flamethrower is what happens after you eat Taco Bell.
That's the truth.
So those Jenkins are going to be bringing both of those on our next outing.
He ain't playing around, is he?
Oh, he ain't playing around. I got to shoot the PMR 30, and that little dude. Oh my God! I finally got to get a good chance to get out there and shoot it. That little sucker will surprise you. Not only is it crazy accurate, but those 22 Magnum rounds hit with a pretty good amount of impact. Hey, Pete. Thank you, little Bree. Just happy upcoming birthday. Yeah, it'll be this Sunday, so we'll be back on Saturday, but Sunday's actually my birthday. But appreciate it. Appreciate all the birthday wishes. Here's an interesting story for you, and I don't know if this one's true or not. I'm trying to run it down. It's kind of one of those third hand kind of stories.
Before you get Robbie said he checked, there's still no answer to my question on that post yet.
Okay,
proceed.
Well, this story supposedly happened back in 1982. Supposedly out in the Cascade Range, a park ranger went for a hike, just checking the trails, making sure everybody was okay, and disappeared. They looked for him. They couldn't find him. Dogs would track him only so far. Sound familiar? They call out, when he doesn't show back up on time, because he said he was just going out for a few hours. When he didn't come back that evening, they didn't really worry too much because he had the gear to survive a couple of nights out there. So they didn't think too much of it. But when he wasn't back the next day and wouldn't answer his radio, they started searching for him. Well, after several days of them searching and finding no sign and the weather starting to turn bad, they finally called the search. And again, this guy's a park ranger. Knew the trails, knew the area, had hiked it many times. So they finally pull the resources and stop the search. And because during the search, the people that were out looking for him in that area kept getting weird feelings in the woods, and someone may have reported thought they were being followed a couple of times. They started avoiding those trails. Even the park rangers were telling people, "Don't go up there because we're not." And a year later, this guy stumbles into the ranger station. A year to the day, stumbles into the station. Yeah, a year later, the dude stumbles into the ranger station and collapses, saying, "I finally got away from those things." And I guess he passed away before they could get anything else out of him. But they still won't let people hike those trails.
And you said this is in the Cascades?
In the Cascades. Again, I heard this story third hand, so I can't tell you how accurate it is, but it's an extremely compelling story. And the Cascades have so many violent sightings.
That's what I was about to say. That's a big hot spot.
He apparently got grabbed and dragged away, and it took him a solid year to finally get away.
Makes you wonder. I kept him alive for a year. What in the world were they doing?
Well, he didn't get a chance to say. He just said, "I finally got."
That's what I'm saying. If they kept him alive for a year, obviously they didn't take him.
They weren't eating him.
I was about to say they didn't take him to eat him.
Yeah, but they said he was pale and gaunt when he came back in. And then basically said, I finally escaped from those things, and then collapsed.
Yeah,
I can't imagine what that poor bastard went through in that year. Supposedly that happened in 82, I believe it was. So tell us a little bit more what's going on in your neck of the woods, what you're waiting to hear back on.
Well, like I said, Rodney sent that to me, and I sent him. I didn't send that particular person. I just put it in that group. If I don't hear nothing back, I'll go back to that specific person. But basically, I just asked. I said, "Is this like this invitation only for BFRO?" Which kind of, we talked a little bit about this behind the scenes in the studio. Sometimes that kind of makes me a little bit concerned that we'll let the BFRO come in. So is it real, and they're just or not, and they're just looking for their 15 minutes of fame? That kind of worries me about it with them making that statement. Usually, I mean, if you want to prove yourself in a situation like that, you're like, come on.
Come on out here.
Yeah, but to say, we'll if the BFRO comes down here, we'll take them and show them everything. I mean, do they have something set up or? But anybody that knows me and knows DA and has known us for more than 2 seconds, that's the way we think. It's the cop in us, and we're always going to look for that in a situation. You know.
Oh, and dude, have you been looking at the latest generation of AI videos?
Oh yeah.
Oh my God, the newest generation of AI produced videos. You've really got to know what you're looking for to notice it's to tell it's fake.
Well, I watched one today, matter of fact, and anybody that watches wrestling and anybody that knows me knows I'm a big wrestling fan. Well, Zoe Stark got hurt pretty bad the other night. Somebody missed a spot. She did a missile drop kick off the top rope, and instead of just turning and landing flat on her body, which, you know, and I wasn't in that situation. I don't know how I would reacted. She turned and tried to land. Well, in other words, she basically hyperextended her knee bad. Yeah, it was one of the things that was hard to watch. Well, the video that today was her talking, and it was her saying that she's having to retire from wrestling and all this kind of stuff. And I'm sitting there listening, and it sounded just like her. And I'm like, and I'm having a little. The only thing that clued it off was she looked up right here, and just a small bit of motion tracking was off, and you saw the lips that were doing the talking stay right here as her mouth moved up, so you could see like 4 sets of lips. But just that little small thing, that was the only thing that gave it away. I was like,
yeah, those new videos,
that was good. That was
AI
really good.
videos. Oh my God! And some of the AI images, dude, it's going to make it a nightmare in this field to determine what's a hoax and what's real.
Have you seen the one where supposedly the patrol car is chasing the Dodge Hellcat at over 100 miles, and they wreck it over 100 miles an hour, and it throws the driver out of?
Yeah,
that one is almost. I mean, other than the fact that the trajectory just looks completely and totally over the top. That's the only thing that gives that away. And it's still in its infancy. That's what's so scary about it.
Yeah, it's going to get better, a lot better. They'll get to be a point where you simply cannot tell them apart.
Yep.
Hillary says, have you heard about the 4-year-old girl and the 6-year-old brother missing since 5'2" or 5'3" in Nova Scotia? I have not. Hillary, if you've got any links to that, can you send them over to me so I've got a point to start digging? I will definitely dig into that. And somebody asked if I'd heard any more about the cannibal case out there. Let's just say I've kind of backburnered that for right now, for reasons I don't want to go into on the air. But I'm still digging. I'm just a little more quiet about it now. Noah and I almost went down to Moon Valley the other night, but we changed our minds at the last minute because it has rained so much these last 4 or 5 days that everything's flooded, and we were afraid we would get down into the valley and not be able to get back out. Little Bree says, that's odd for a park ranger to go missing, isn't it? I've only heard about it happening less than a handful of times. Wow, 1 year later than he died. That's freaking crazy. Actually, I've been finding a lot of stuff to do with park rangers because I started actually specifically looking for park ranger stuff. And I'm going to expand that to include conservation agents, game wardens. Because one of the better stories I've collected, I read it on here. It's been a while. I could dig the story out and read it again if you guys would like to hear it. But this story was told to me by a conservation agent who worked down. He not close to us. He was near the Arkansas border, but he was like closer to the boot heel than around here. If it'd been Berry County, I'd have been like, show me where this is at. Because I'm going, but I don't know if y'all know too much about southern Missouri, but there's a little bitty ass town down closer to the boot heel called Koshkonong, Missouri. You can look it up. Koshkonog, Koshkonong. And it's a wide spot in the road. There is not much there. But the story that I collected again from a game warden, was down near Koshkonong. Northwood says, DA, I just sent you a picture. Did you send it to email or to Messenger? Because I don't have my Messenger up. Because during the show, I start getting like 100 messages. Right when we go off the air, I'll be answering messages for an hour. KC says the Park Service doesn't tell you about regular people going missing. They're definitely not going to tell you about one of their own.
He said email.
Email. I'll have to check it after the show, man, because it's going to be tough for me to bring that up, unless I get Robbie to talking. And Robbie's kind of laconic sometimes. He doesn't talk for very long. But I can get Robbie to go, and I'll look it up during the show. But if you guys would like to hear that account again,
I'm like an old diesel engine. It takes me a while to get going. Once I get going, it's hard to stop me.
Dr. 45 says, DA talked to my aunt again about her friend from Moon Valley. Dude, message me, Dr. 45. Message me. Maybe we can arrange something. I'd love to talk to her. Vicky says, DA, I won't let them come on my property. I don't blame you. In a lot of cases, I don't blame you. Let's see. Wendell says, tell it, DA. Let's see what everybody says. If you guys would like to hear that account again that I got from a conservation agent, just let me know. Say something in the chat. Because it's kind of a long one. But it's an interesting one.
Which one is that? The one where he was talking to the old guy, or
where he went looking for an old guy?
But the old guy he'd been talking to, and then he disappeared, or okay, yes, that's a good one. We tell so many of these stories. Sometimes we got to clarify which one we're talking to or talking about, rather.
Oh, this one's from Ants Creek. This is an account from Ants Creek, which is right over there by Joe Bald.
Didn't we? We did something down there on Ants Creek one time, didn't we?
Yeah, when we went down to Joe Bald, we drove down to Ants Creek.
I knew that
it's an open campground, though. It is still currently active. But I've heard of people say they saw Bigfoot walking through the park there at Ants Creek.
That's right. That we drove through there, and you were telling us that when we drove through there, because we were comparing how similar they look, other than Joe Ball just being a little bit overgrown.
Okay, I found it. You guys want to hear the story?
I think so. Everybody's been saying, tell it.
Okay. Well, this is one I've done on the show before, but it's probably been.
Well, you've told it. Yeah, you've told it a couple times, but yeah, I think the last time
it was back in 23 when last time I read this one on
the
air. I call it the Game Warden's Tale, and I'll just read it just as I've got it written down here, because it was one of those where I took the notes and then kind of wrote it up, but. It's a guy who's still with the conservation department, but although he's not in that area anymore, does not want his name mentioned in it because it could cost him his retirement. So the man that told me this story said I could share it, but asked to remain anonymous. For this story, we'll just call him Tim. That's not his real name. Tim worked for the conservation department along the Missouri-Arkansas border and did so for many years. Still does. He's just got a couple years left till retirement. He's still employed with him, and he asked that we not reveal his real name for fear of reprisals. This is his story in his own words. I've been a state employee for the last 20 years, 15 of that as an agent investigating and prosecuting poachers on state land. During my time, people joked about Bigfoot, and we even used to scare campers and newly graduated agents with scary campfire tales of giant hairy monsters in the Mark Twain. But honestly, I'd never seen anything and didn't really believe it was out there. That all changed one day in late August, and this would have been August of 2015. I was investigating allegations of long-term poaching by a man we'll just call Tom. I've known Tom for a very long time, having been a game warden in the area where he lived for many years. He'd spoken to me on many occasions when checking in legally taken deer. However, we knew he was harvesting deer out of season but couldn't prove it. I'd been trying to catch him at home so we could search his freezer for illegally obtained venison, but I could never find him there. Finally, I managed to find his wife and confronted her about the poaching. She immediately broke down crying, admitted that they'd been keeping themselves fed by illegally harvesting deer and other wildlife. I knew the family was impoverished and I didn't want to ruin them more financially, but I still had a job to do. That's when she told me something that caught my attention. She told me where he'd been hunting recently and then he hadn't returned home in several days. She was worried something had happened to him and asked if I could find him and bring him home. She gave me the exact location and I agreed to try and find him. It was early enough in the day that I knew I could get to the location with plenty of light left to search for Tom. I left and called the office, letting them know where I was going and what I was planning to do. They asked if I needed another agent to back me up, but I declined. In retrospect, I wish I'd have done that, but I wasn't expecting trouble. It took me just over an hour to get to the location south of Koshkonong, Missouri. It was close to the Arkansas state line, but well within Missouri, so I had no concerns about jurisdiction. However, if he fled into Arkansas, all I had to do was wait for him to return to his vehicle or contact Arkansas authorities to pick him up when he left the woods. Tom wasn't violent, so I wasn't expecting a fight from him. I figured he'd just give up as soon as I confronted him. He was pushing 70 and he had a bad leg. He wasn't exactly a flight risk or a physical threat. I arrived in the area and found the old logging road he'd used to get back into the woods. It was right where his wife said it would be. The road was rutted and overgrown, but not impassable. I had a good four-wheel drive, and I'd been into much worse. A mile or so into the woods, I spotted his red Ford 4x4. It was an old vehicle, and I recognized it instantly because the right front quarter panel didn't match the rest of the truck. It was green and made the truck easily identifiable. I pulled up beside the truck and exited my vehicle. The truck wasn't locked, and a small campsite was just in front of it. The tent was unzipped, and no one was inside. The sleeping bag was still unrolled, and a backpack set undisturbed next to it. There was a fire pit, but the coals were long cold. From the look of it, there hadn't been a fire in a few days. I started to get a really bad feeling that something had happened to Tom. I was concerned he might have fallen or had a heart attack out here without anyone to help him. I began searching the campsite for tracks, hoping to get some idea of where he might be. There were 3 trails leading out of the camp, and they had all been used within the last week. I was looking at boot prints and froze when I saw something completely unexpected. I saw a track that had to be every bit of 18 inches long, completely covering one of the boot prints. The odd part was it looked like a giant bare foot. I figured someone had to be messing with me. The most recently used trail led off to the west, and I started following it. About 100 yards from the camp, I saw what had once been a deer stand. It was a metal climbing stand that had been attached to a large walnut tree. It had been ripped off the tree and twisted up like a pretzel, then smashed against the trunk. A few feet away was a lever-action Marlin 30-30 that had been bent in half. The lever was still extended and the chamber was empty. Whatever had happened here, Tom hadn't gone down without a fight. A knot was starting to form in the pit of my stomach. I took out my phone, intending to call for backup, when I noticed I didn't have any signal. I cursed softly and started to reach for my radio before I realized I hadn't grabbed it from the charger in the center console of my truck. It also occurred to me that I hadn't brought my rifle. My only defense was a buck knife and a Glock 17 with 2 extra magazines. That's when I noticed the entire area was dead quiet. Not like the quiet that most people experience. The only sound was the wind gently rustling through the leaves. That's it. It was unnaturally quiet, and I felt panic welling up in my gut. I wanted to break and run for the truck, but my knowledge of predators stopped me. I knew that would incite an attack. I didn't know if it was a cougar, a bear, or something else entirely, but there was definitely a big predator nearby. Then I remembered the footprint and nearly lost my resolve. I began backing slowly toward the truck, drawing my pistol as I moved. I swept the area and didn't see anything out of place. That's when I saw a flash of blue in the bushes to my left. I wanted to get out of the area, but I had to know for sure what it was. I cautiously pushed the branches back and found Tom. His eyes were wide open in terror, and his head was twisted around backwards. It also looked like his arms and legs were broken since they were all lying at odd angles. He was a good 30 yards from the wreckage of his deer stand. From his color, I could tell he'd been dead for at least a couple of days. It would take a coroner to say for sure, but this wasn't my first dead body. You kind of get a feel for these things, and I knew I was in the right ballpark. I started to turn away when I saw something clutched in Tom's left hand. It was a clump of long, dark hair. I leaned closer and noticed a foul smell like a mixture of manure and rotten roadkill. It was nasty, and I backed away. A branch behind me snapped, and I turned to see a creature that had to be every bit of 8 feet tall staring back at me. It was shaped somewhere between a man and a gorilla. Its arms were longer than average, and its knees were bent more than is normal for a man. It was swaying back and forth as it stared at me. It bared its teeth and reminded me of those videos of chimps making a threat display. It made an odd ook, ook, ook sound, too. The thing was powerfully built and looked like it could flip my truck over without much strain. My first instinct was to dump my entire magazine into it and then run for the truck, but I thought better of it. I sincerely doubted my little 9mm would do much more than make it mad, and I'd already seen what it could do to a man. I kept the barrel of the pistol low and began moving slowly toward the truck. The creature watched me warily, and I could see it occasionally flicking its eyes toward the pistol. Whatever this thing was, it understood what a firearm was, and I got the distinct feeling that if I tried to raise it, this thing would have torn me apart. Once I was on the trail, I picked up my pace. It began following me, not getting any closer, but not letting me get any farther away either. I knew I had a rifle in the truck, but I thought getting the hell out of there was a better choice. It paced me until I got to my truck and fired up the engine. By the time I got turned around to leave, I'd completely lost sight of it. I don't know which scared me worse, though, seeing it or not seeing it and knowing it was still out there. I knew it was still watching me, though, so I headed out of the area as quickly as I could go. Once I was back out on the highway, I got on the radio and called for additional units to assist with body recovery of a deceased subject who was the victim of some sort of animal attack. No sooner did I hung up the mic than my phone rang. It was my boss. He wanted to know exactly what had happened. I was so shaken up that I just blurted it all out. I told him everything, including the Bigfoot thing and the condition of the body. He was strangely calm when he told me to drop a GPS tag on the exact location of the body and to return to the office. He didn't want me to go back out there. I asked about Tom's body, and he told me not to worry about it. It would all be taken care of. When I made it back, my boss called me into his office. Inside were 2 men in military uniforms that I didn't recognize. I'd never seen them before. They presented Department of Defense credentials and didn't give me their names. I was then told that my official report was going to read that the subject had died from injuries sustained in a fall from his deer stand and that the scavengers had gotten to the body. Positive identification had been made, and his family would be informed of his death, but due to the condition of the body, they wouldn't be allowed to see it. I was then told under no uncertain terms that if I said anything other than what was contained in this report, then it would be the end of my career, and I could be prosecuted for violating the non-disclosure agreement I was forced to sign. Honestly, I might have said too much by telling you this story, and it could even come back to haunt me. Fortunately, though, it's been long enough that I don't think anyone will remember the event, much less the circumstances of Tom's death. Besides, I'll retire in a couple of years and it won't matter anymore. The funny thing is, this isn't even the strangest thing that's happened in our department in the last 10 years or so. I'd love to tell you about those, but they're not my stories to tell. Maybe when I retire. Besides, who's going to believe me?
That is a good one. I think we did that on an encounter show one night.
Mm-hmm. Well, what do y'all think? And I absolutely believe that dude. I mean, when he was telling me, I could see his hand shaking. There was goosebumps on his arms. He would like look around because we were in the woods when I was talking to him.
I mean, just the sheer number of, and we've talked about this before, the sheer number of park rangers, game wardens, DNR, whatever you want to call them, squirrel police, trout patrol, whatever you want to call them, just the sheer number of those that, either one, when you ask them, will just be like, not laugh at you and call you stupid, but just, just stone faces. Like, those are the ones that they know something, but they've been told not to say what they know. And then you get the ones that, once they get into this position, like that guy of, okay, I don't care. I'm at the end of my career. People need to know this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I want Nathan. I want to get him nailed down, because I've still got his number in my contacts. I still text him once in a while. We were at a department training event that had multiple departments at it, and there were a bunch of guys there from the conservation office. And I mentioned Bigfoot, and most people just kind of laughed it off. But once we had a range component. We were out on a range on the other side of Sparta, and when everybody was kind of partnering off and doing their own thing, he kind of came over and he goes, "I got a Bigfoot story for you, but you're probably not going to believe it." I'm like, "Oh, you might be surprised." And
Try me.
he told me, "Yeah, try me." You guys want to hear another one? And this story, not only did I take the story firsthand, this was a friend of mine's dad. He's passed away now. And my buddy doesn't even live in the state anymore. I'm not going to say his name because I've never asked his permission. But this is a guy who I grew up in and out of his house. I know this man well. Known him since I was knee high to a grasshopper. And when I say this is not the kind of guy who would make up stories to freak people out, yeah, very sober dude. Not the kind of guy who would spin yarns or anything just to freak people out. What were you going to say, Robbie?
Leonard, when we got on calling DNR stuff, he put grouper troopers. I've never heard that one before.
That's funny. I love that.
Oh, the old grouper troopers.
Yeah. Well, if you guys want to hear this one, I'll go ahead and read this one too, because it's in my notes right here. I call it the mushroom hunter's tale. I was told this story at deer a number of years ago. I think I was
ATV.
Huh? Yeah.
ATV. Yeah.
I was probably in my early 20s when he told me this story. It was before I was married. A whole bunch of us were at deer camp. I don't know if any of you guys know too much about deer hunters in Missouri, but when we pick a deer camp, we'll set up tents and little camper trailers or even pop-up trailers, and we'll stay out there for a week. I miss doing that. I haven't done it in a long time, but I miss deer camp because you've got some good food and good friends, and you occasionally even got some hunting done in. But I actually we'd been asking him questions. Well, I'll get to that as I read the story. But one night at deer camp, he finally broke down and told us a story. I was told this story at deer camp several years ago, and it supposedly happened around early May of 1986. I know the man in this story, and he's not one to spin tales or to make up yarns. He had a nasty scar over his left eye, and I'd always wondered how he got it. I'd been asking him since I was a kid, because I was 16 in 86 when this supposedly happened, and I'd been asking him since I was probably 17. How'd you get that scar? And it was several years later before he finally broke down and told us. And I'd always wondered how he got the scar. I'd been asking him for years, and he'd always answer, "It's a long story." Well, we were sitting around the fire, and we'd been passing a jar of good moonshine back and forth when he suddenly got deathly serious and looked at me. He said, "Do you really want to know how I got this scar?" And with it rubbing his finger on it. I said, "Yeah, I want to hear the story." He said, my friend passed away. He passed away around the time my youngest son was born. So he passed away in 99. Noah was born in July of 99. So this guy passed away in right before Noah. I think it was May of 99 when he passed away. But I never asked him, because I was still, at that time, I really wasn't doing stuff like this. I was still researching, but I wasn't I didn't have a podcast. I hadn't written books. So I had really no reason to try to see about going public with any of the stories. I had no plans or anything like that. So I never really asked his permission to use his name. So I'm not gone out of respect. But for the sake of the story, let's just call him Keith. That's not his name, but it's kind of, if you knew him, it's kind of close. I've debated about telling this story, and since he was so reluctant to share. After a lot of thought, I decided I'd share it. He'd always encouraged me to chase my dreams of being a writer, and he did enjoy a good campfire story. He was quite a bit older than me, but I grew up with his son and had known him for a long time. I spent many a day cutting wood and hauling hay on his land. He lived out the other side of Lebanon, out northeast of Lebanon on 32 Highway. Making extra money when I was a teenager. I'd go buck hay on his land every summer and made pretty good money. He knew I was interested in Bigfoot and things like that, and I always suspected he knew something he wasn't telling me. For one, I don't think I ever saw him step out of his house without a gun. Even when we were deer hunting, he took the biggest rifle I'd ever seen. It was a lever-action Winchester 454. And we used to joke and say he preferred his deer meat pre-chewed because, he took the biggest damn rifle he could find short of a buffalo gun to hunt deer. And we said, we're hunting deer, not Cape buffalo. And he'd just shrug and say, there's bigger things out here in these woods than deer. It might do you good to remember that. But that's all he would say. When he finally decided to tell us the story of the scar, we all sat and just absolutely enthralled with the story. He tossed the shot glass of the moonshine into the fire and made it flare up. I think that was more for dramatic effect than anything. And then he settled back into his chair. The tale he told us kept us on the edge of our seats and scared the shit out of us. I can tell you that for sure. No one slept in camp that night. We all sat up and kept the fire going bright, and no one wanted to admit how scared the story had made us. We all kept our rifles in hand, and this is his story in his own words. So I used to go out every year and hunt morel mushrooms, and that you all been out in the woods hunting morels in springtime of the year. You can bring in a pretty good crop, and they're really good around Missouri. You can find them. We got a good section of land where the morels grow. Not only are they valuable, but they're good to eat. I mean, a lot of people will get them, and there's lots of different ways to cook them. But they grow wild, and if you've got a place to hunt them, you probably ought to keep it to yourself because people will show up in droves to come after these mushrooms. But anyway, he says I used to go out every year and hunt morel mushrooms. I love them and always managed to bring home a lot. I knew a good spot on state land that bordered against mine, and not many people made it that far back into the woods. If you were patient, you could bring in a good crop of them before the season ended. Back then, I had a hunting partner. I'm sure you boys remember Molly, my blue heeler shepherd mix. She was the best hunting partner I ever had. We all nodded. I'd always wondered what happened to that dog. All he would ever say is she got lost while hunting and never made it home. I had a feeling we were about to learn the truth, though. Molly and I went everywhere together. Well, except deer hunting. She couldn't sit still long enough to keep quiet. She always had to be up and investigating everything around us. That made her great for rabbit and squirrel hunting, but not so good for deer. If I went camping, fishing, riding my four-wheeler or whatever, she was right there with me. I was always happy to have her along when we went out looking for mushrooms because she figured out pretty fast what I was looking for and would point me in the right direction. She'd range out around me, and sometimes if I lost sight of her, I'd lose sight of her for a few minutes before she'd come back bounding in with a rock or a stick in her mouth. The dog loved to explore. We took the four-wheeler back as far as we could go on my land, then slipped through the fence onto state land. It wasn't more than 100 yards into the woods before we started seeing quite a few mushrooms. I had a canvas bag hooked over my shoulder with a strap. Carefully, I started collecting the mushrooms and tucking them into the bag. Molly was lying right at my feet with her ears up. This struck me as odd because she was usually off exploring. That's when I realized she hadn't left my side since we left the four-wheeler. I stood up and looked around but didn't see anything out of place. The woods were really quiet, but I kind of put it out of my head. I'd been coming into these woods for years and hadn't seen so much as a cougar track. I couldn't imagine a big predator being in the area, so I just dismissed it as animals being quiet because of me. Boys, I should have left right then and there, but I was just getting started and I wanted a big bunch of mushrooms to take home. After a few minutes of looking around, I went back to picking mushrooms. Molly stayed right with me and stayed on alert. She was noticing something that I wasn't. A couple of times she let out a soft whine or a short growl. Again, I should have listened to that warning and headed for the house, but I kept stuffing mushrooms into the sack. We had moved deeper into the woods, about 200 yards or so from where the four-wheeler was parked. I kept a good mental map of where it was just in case we needed to get out of there in a hurry. The woods were still strangely quiet, and I was starting to get a bit nervous. Molly stayed right by my side, never moving more than a foot or two away. Finally, all of this started to get me. and I decided to finish picking the cluster I'd just found, then get out of there. Maybe I'd come back in a day or two and see if things had changed. I was picking the last of the mushrooms when a rock hit me in the side of the head. Hit me in the side. It thumped at my ribs hard enough to hurt, and I saw where it fell to the ground. It was a smooth river rock about the size of a silver dollar. There weren't any creeks or rivers around here. Well, at least not within a half a mile or so. I stood up and looked in the direction where the rock had come from, but didn't see anything or anyone. Molly bristled up and began growling. I glanced down at her when another rock streaked in and hit me just above my left eye, with enough force that I might have lost consciousness for a minute or two. The next thing I knew, I was looking up from the ground and I could only see through one eye. I gingerly touched my left eye and found it was covered with blood. The vision in my right eye was blurry and my head was swimming. I could see Molly was right beside me with her hackles up, and she was growling and barking at something out of my view. The sound of her barking seemed to be coming from a long way off. She was doing her best to protect me and keep something away. Then something dark and covered in hair stepped into view and grabbed Molly by the neck. There was a whine followed by a crack, and I knew it had just snapped her neck. I couldn't make out the thing's face since my vision was blurry, but it looked almost like a man, just bigger. I know it's tough to make a good estimate of something's height while you're lying on the ground, but I guessed because Molly looked like a kid's stuffed animal in its hands. Whenever she got into my lap in my recliner, she took up my entire lap. She weighed about 80 pounds, and that thing made her look like a kid's toy. That thing had to be well over 8 feet tall and was massively built, maybe 1,000 pounds. While it tucked Molly under its arm, I felt another hand grab my ankle and start dragging me. The one that had Molly grabbed my bag of mushrooms where I dropped it when I fell. That meant there were at least 2 of the damn things. It was dragging me without any effort, and I figured it wasn't planning to take me back to my four-wheeler. We were heading the wrong direction. I suddenly had the feeling that these things were planning on eating me and Molly. That thought really pissed me off. Through the pain and the fuzzy feeling in my head, I suddenly remembered I was carrying my old .45 on my hip. I fumbled around and my fingers closed on the handle. I cocked it as I drew and fired twice at the thing that was dragging me. I don't know if I hit it or not, but it let go of me and screamed this god-awful shriek before racing off into the woods. I turned the pistol toward the one that had Molly and fired 3 times. This time I knew I hit it at least once because I saw the blood fly from its shoulder. It screamed like the first one and raced off into the trees in a different direction, but it didn't drop Molly or the mushrooms. I got shakily to my feet and looked around, keeping my pistol ready to shoot if I saw another one of those things. In the woods around me, I could hear what sounded like a bunch of monkeys raising a ruckus. It sounded like a bunch of them, but they never came out where I could see them. My head was clearing a bit, and I knew I only had a couple bullets left in my pistol before I'd have to change magazines. I'd only brought one more, and it only held 7 rounds. If those things came at me in a rush, I was going to go down shooting, but it wasn't going to be a very long fight. As much as I wanted to go get Molly to give her a proper burial, I knew she'd given her life to protect me. I had to get out of there or she died for nothing. I headed back toward the four-wheeler, and those things kept pace with me. They started throwing rocks, sticks, pine cones, and anything else they could find. I got hit a few times, but not enough to knock me back down. It seemed like it took me hours to get back to the four-wheeler, but it was probably only just a few minutes. I dove over the fence and turned to see if any of them were coming out of the trees. Another big rock sailed right at me, and I ducked to the side. It smashed the headlight and bent the handlebar on my four-wheeler. I fired off both rounds that I had left from where I'd seen the rock come and heard something grunt in pain. "Take that, you sons of bitches," I hollered as I changed the magazine. I jumped on the four-wheeler and hit the starter. It fired right up, and I checked the handlebars. They weren't bad enough to keep me from driving it, but turning might be a bit dicey if I had to make a sudden left. I shoved the pistol back in my holster and put the four-wheeler in gear. Then I spun around, sending dirt and leaves into the air. More rocks and sticks rained down around me as I raced off and back down the trail that led to my house. Just ahead, I could see a tall pine tree starting to lean out over the trail. Those big bastards were trying to block my escape. I knew if I didn't get past it, I was done for. There wasn't another clear trail back to the house without going right through the thick of the woods. I gunned the engine and ducked as low as I could as I raced for my life with that damn tree. I felt the branches brush my back as I slept past it, just barely avoiding getting smashed by it. I didn't slow down until I hit the field behind my house. I jumped off and ran into the house, grabbed my 12 gauge and headed back out. I could hear them damn things shrieking from the trees, but they never came out into the field. After a few minutes, I went inside and had my wife clean up my eye and bandage it. I wanted to tell her what happened, but I didn't think she'd believe me. Hell, I barely believed it. I finally broke down and told her. She wasn't sure what to think until one tried to get in the house that night. She saw it clearly in the porch light when I shot at it with the shotgun. For almost a month after that, we'd hear the damn things coming around the house at night. We made sure to keep the doors locked and the animals in the barn. We lost a few chickens and one hog, but we managed to protect the rest. After that, they never came back, at least as far as we know. You boys want to know why I carry a rifle this big? Well, it ain't for the damn deer. I plan on killing every one of them sons of bitches I see. And if this 454 can't get the job done, then I hope they fucking choke on me. And I heard that story direct, and I'm telling you, I no doubt he was telling me the truth. He was not the kind of guy who would just say something like that at deer camp just to freak you out. If he wanted to tell you a story, he'd probably preface it with, okay, I'm going to tell you a good one. You guys are going to like this one, but this one, I honestly believe it was absolutely the gospel truth because he was shook up. And I remember that dog. Hey, Larry, thank you for the super chat, man.
Thanks, Larry.
I remember that dog as a kid. I used to play with that dog all the time. I always wondered what happened to it. And he would not talk about that. And I think it was probably deer season 92 when he told us this story. So it was like 8 years after it happened. 6 years after it happened. 86 to 92.
That's a good story.
That one wigs me out because I know right where that is. And yeah. Well, when we were out at Chris's house, we're about 3 miles from there.
Well, I told you when we were on our way out there. Remember, I said, dude, this is like prime. Like if you were gonna stage a movie, or out on a scouting location, looking for a movie about either something, Bigfoot in the woods, a serial killer, whatever. Where we were at that night, it fits the bill.
Where we met him down by the river, if we'd have gone back out of there and turned left instead of right to go to his house and went back up the road about half a mile, there's a gravel road leads off the road on the left, and it was back down that road.
Well, even more,
another mile and a half, 2 miles down that gravel road.
When me and you were standing out there waiting on him.
Yeah, that's out east 32.
When we were standing out, me and you were just standing there by ourselves waiting on him. We both got the feeling that we were not out there by ourselves.
That is a creepy area. I mean, that whole area out near the Gasconade River, that's some thick woods and ain't nothing out but hillbillies, man.
Didn't we hear some tree branches snapping after he got there or something?
Yeah, is that swampy, marshy area behind us? Yeah, kept hearing something back there. Because I know both of you and I were getting a little nervous when we were waiting for him to get there.
Yeah, well, I'm not after he got there because remember he was talking and telling us something, and we started hearing something. So we both turned around and looked, and he was like, "Did y'all hear that too?" So all three of us heard the exact same thing.
And his house was only just a couple miles from there.
Yeah.
And the woods behind his house are freaking creepy as hell, too.
Yeah. I want to go back out there when Doc's with us, too, because that area, I want to get in those woods behind his house. I mean,
when we get back here, we'll go to that spot. We can't get on the land anymore because after he passed away, the family sold the land. So I can't get on his land per se, but I can get us to that conservation land.
I'm sure they don't make it never mind but the difference between private and conservation.
Probably not. Glad you guys liked it. That to me, that's one of the creepiest stories I've ever been told.
Oh yeah,
because I think he was fixing to get ate. They were dragging him off.
Yes, he was about to get it.
Had he not had that pistol on, he just would have disappeared in the woods. And he barely got back out of there.
Well, I mean, had he not got past that tree, there's no telling what would have happened.
Yeah, if that tree would have either knocked him off the back of that four-wheeler or blocked the trail before he could get there, Because I've been out in those woods. The woods were too thick for the 4-wheeler. He would have had to have got off and gone through the woods to get around that tree. There's no way he could have got the 4-wheeler through those trees.
Well, I mean, but just think about me, you, and Noah that night in Joe Bald. Had we kept on going,
It would have been cut off.
I don't think that was a Bigfoot, but had we kept on going in the direction that we were headed, same thing.
Jeff Yarrington says the mushrooms were an appetizer. Yeah, well, that's a food source. And the morel mushrooms only grow at a certain time of the year, and it makes absolute sense that they would capitalize on the food source.
Yeah, I think that they're, just like a bear. A bear's opportunistic. Bear's an omnivore. It's going to eat whatever. It's not going to turn a meal down. When you get in lean months and go into that calorie deficit, you're going to wish you had taken the free meal that had presented itself. And I believe that they're just like a bear or anything like that. They're not going to turn down a meal.
Right.
And
White Rook, no, I've never been to Chickamauga, but I do know about the legend of Old Green Eyes. Yeah, that's a very interesting story.
I've never been to
Chickamauga, but I want to go there.
I've been by there. I've never been out in the field though, or in the woods around. I want to myself. Greg's in the house. The old Dogman Eye Candy himself.
What's up, Greg? Kathy Steen and Wyatt want me to tell the story about the house in the woods.
The one you and Chris went.
My buddy Chris, I grew up with, his family had a cabin that they'd built on about 40 acres of land out off of East 32, but it's not on East 32. I believe it's on O Highway. You go out 32 and then turn off on O Highway, then go down a gravel road for a bit. And I spent half of my teenage years out there riding horses and cutting hay and stuff. But I knew the McGees. They were like a second family. I was at their house, as much as, if not more, than my own. But Chris and I decided we were going to, and I wrote a short story about this, but the short story is a little more dramatic, as short stories are intended to be. But this is what happened. Chris and I decided we were going to go, because there was land across the road from his house that nobody knew who it belonged to. We assumed it belonged to the bank. It wasn't marked. There were no trespassing signs. There were farms on either side of this big stand of trees. But we asked everybody. He knew everybody that lived out there. Nobody knew who the land belonged to, and it was a lot of acreage of thick woods. So, being the idiot teenagers we are, we decided we were going to go have a look. So we grabbed our backpacks, and I grabbed my shotgun. I had a Mossberg 12 gauge at the time, and he had I think it was a little Ruger 1022. And we packed a lunch, and took a first aid kit and a couple of canteens, and we hopped the fence and went off in the woods. And we were just basically looking for places to squirrel hunt, or places where we could go camp or anything like that. We didn't know what to expect. We didn't know what was back there. But after about half hour of just us trudging through the woods, we came across an old road, and it was mostly overgrown, but you could still see it. And it wasn't like a paved road. It was like an old path where vehicles would go. There was like two ruts and then grown up in the middle, that kind of road. I guess calling it a road is being generous. It was more of a trail, but it was obvious that cars had come through here, not recently, but quite a bit for this to still be there. It had been the trees had been cleared back, but there were a lot of saplings growing up in the middle of this road, but you could still see it was there. So we kind of, which way do we go? Because that road was through the woods, and I think we kind of flipped a coin and decided to go left. So we started up this old road, and about quarter of a mile up the road from where we came out of the woods, we found an old plow, one of the ones you hitch behind horses. And it, other than one of the wooden handles being snapped off of it, yeah, of course it was rusty, but it was in fantastic shape. I mean, I know a lot of people will like display those old plows and stuff in their yards. It was definitely an antique thing. Was probably every part of 70, 80 years old. And this was in, I want to say 84 or 85. I think I was 14 at the time. And I know it wasn't old enough to drive. But we decided that we were gonna press on. It's like, hey, if we could find a way to get in here with a truck, maybe we should take this thing. It's probably valuable. I'm like, yeah, this thing could probably sell for quite a bit if we could get it out of here, but it's gonna be heavy. And you could tell it'd been there for a long time because it was kind of sunk down into the ground. We would have had to have dug it out and then winched it up into the truck. And he's like, yeah, we ought to come back in here if we can find a way to get a truck in here, because we didn't know where the road went. And so we pressed on a little farther. We went a little farther up the road, and now we find an old car. And I thought it was an old Ford. I could have been wrong. It might have been an old Chevy, but it was an old car, like a 1930s model. Looked like something ZZ Top would fix up. I was an old car, and it was completely rusted out. Didn't have any glass left in it. All the seats were in tatters, but we had very little actual material left on the seats. Mostly just wire from the springs. And I still had the motor in it. The tires were basically rotted off of it. It looked like this thing had probably been sitting here for 40 years. Well, that's when we got the first glimpse of the house. It was a 2-story house out here in the middle of the woods, and there were no telephone poles anywhere around this house. That's the first thing I noticed. I'm like, this house didn't have any power. And I remembered my dad saying that Rural Electric had put power out in that area back in the 40s. So this house had to be older than mid 1940s, because it had no power. So we get on up closer to the house, and most of the front porch was like sagging and caved in, but it wasn't completely caved in. You could still walk on it. All the boards on the front porch were sunken in. All the ground floor, there were no window. There was no glass left in any of the windows, and we could kind of see inside. And Chris is like, let's go inside. Let's go check this thing out. And I'm like, okay, yeah, let's do it. So we go in this house, and the floors inside were kind of, very squishy. The floors were not in great shape. So we were a little worried we were going to fall through, but it didn't look like it had a basement, like it just had a crawl space. So we figured we weren't going to fall far, but I told him, I said, we don't want to fall through at all, because there's probably, in that crawl space down there's probably full of snakes. So we were kind of being careful where we stepped. And in the kitchen, the sink in the kitchen had an old hand pump water spout. So, no electricity, obviously. You pumped your water into the basin. And there was another pump like that out in the backyard. But also in the kitchen was one of those old cast iron cook stoves. A wood stove that you cooked on. It had a oven on it. It big flat top surface for cooking. It was a cook stove, wood fired cook stove, and it was completely made of cast iron with like ceramic fixtures and stuff like that. And it was still in fantastic shape. Yeah, it was pretty rusty, and those things were expensive in the day, and that was a major investment. So for it to still be in the house was kind of shocking. I'm like. And we'd also seen a couple other cars out there that were pretty much in the same shape as that first one, just been sitting there forever, and were all rusted out heaps. I'm like, who the hell leaves all this stuff behind? I said, we got vehicles out there, but this cast iron cook stove, and at the time you probably could have sold it for $500 or $600, and knew it would have set somebody back a lot, because back, pre-Great Depression, that was a major purchase. Well, even today buying a cook stove is a major purchase, but that thing was worth a lot of money in its day, and it was still intact. Still had the little metal flue that went up through the wall. It was looked like if the kitchen had not been fallen in, that you could have started a fire in it and cooked on it. Other than the fact that it was pretty rusty, and I was like, man, this thing is awesome. I would love to have this. And he said, yeah, but it'd take like 6 of us to get that thing out of this house. And so we were like joking, saying we were going to come back with the truck and get the plow and get that stove. And there was a wood stove in the living room. There was no fireplaces, but there were several like those old cast iron potbelly wood stoves, including one upstairs. Well, we didn't know that at the time because we hadn't been upstairs yet. Chris is like, let's go upstairs. And I'm like, I don't know if I trust those stairs. They look like they're going to fall. So he goes over and tries the stairs, and shockingly, they held his weight. He's like, come on, let's go. So we climb these stairs, and we get up into the top of the house, and the house, you can kind of feel it shift a little bit. I'm like, okay, this is bad. We do not need to be up here. Well, with the top of the stairs was a little like room between bedrooms. There were bedrooms on both sides of the stairs, but at the top of the stairs was like this little area and had like a ruined old chair in it. But in that little area, there were all kinds of animal bones and some scat. And if Chris goes, it's probably just cow shit, because it was pretty big piles. I went, cows don't climb the damn stairs, dude. I said, there's no way a cow came up the stairs and shit up here. Something came up here. And he goes, well, it's probably, coyotes or something. I'm like, that's a big damn coyote. So we look in the master bedroom, which was right off of that. And inside that master bedroom was this enormous freaking nest. And it was probably, I don't know, 7-8 feet across, and woven branches and stuff. It looked like we'll watch Discovery Channel, how gorillas will weave a nest. That's what it looked like, only it was huge. And in that nest were like small bones, like from rabbit or squirrel, small animal bones. Nothing big, just a bunch of small animal bones. And it stunk. And I'm like, what the hell is this? He goes, dude, I don't know. And then we heard something snort outside. And it was like that. And I'm like, what the hell was that? Then we heard something kind of hit the back of the house like it was coming in. So I just stuck the shotgun barrel out the window and blasted. And then whatever it was, it took off. So we're like, what in the hell was that? And I'm like, I'm not sticking around to find out. So we beat feet down the stairs, went out through one of the front windows, and ran back down toward the road. And we didn't slow down until we got to that plow. And we kind of stopped to catch our breath at that plow. And while we were sitting there talking, trying to figure out what had just happened, a rock about the size of a softball comes sailing out of the woods and hit that plow. And talking about ring like a gong. And we were at that point, we were just absolutely beside ourselves, because what throws rocks at you? Bears don't. And it was so big, and it traveling. We could see it arcing up out of the trees. This thing was so big, and I was a pretty good sized kid at that time. I spent my time hauling hay and cutting wood. I was a pretty solid hillbilly kid. I could pick that rock up and throw it, but not more than about 5 or 10 feet. It was probably a 10-pound rock, and that thing probably flew 30 yards. Arced up out of the trees, and it hit that plow. And at that point, we're like, we got to get the hell out of here. Something is out here. So we hauled ass back down this road, and we get to the point where I recognize where we came out of the woods, and we could hear something follow us, but we never saw it. And I'm like, what do we do? Do we cut through the woods, or we keep going down the road? He goes, well, I don't know where the hell the road goes. And I said, well, the only way we're getting back to your house before dark is going through the woods we went through. He's like, dude, I don't want to go into those woods. I don't know what the hell's in there. Because they were thick. Robbie's been in the Missouri woods out here. He can tell you how thick they are. You get underneath that canopy of trees, and it's just basically dark. And and again, if you guys have read the short story called "The House in the Woods," I heavily dramatized it. What happened next was not us in a running gun battle with Bigfoot like in the story, but we were followed, and we would hear stuff thrown at us. And I did fire several times to keep things from getting close, because it seemed like they were getting closer. So we finally get back to the fence, and whatever's back there is close. We can hear it smashing through the trees behind us. We get to that fence. Chris goes over. I throw in my shotgun, and I go over. When we get out to the road, and we're still where we came out of the woods was actually about half a mile down the road from his parents' house where we had originally entered. And so we were like heading for it, like trying to head down the road to hoof it down there, and we could hear whatever it was still in the woods following us. And one of his neighbors just happened to come driving down the road, old man by the name of Bridges. And he said, hey, boys, you need a ride? And I was never so grateful to jump in the back of an old pickup truck than I was at that particular moment. And we got back, we busted ass back down to Chris's house. And for like several nights after that, like that night, because I went home later, but Chris said something would set off their security lights. the dogs wouldn't come out from underneath the porch, and the people around him lost like several cattle over the next week or so, and then it just stopped.
Y'all pissed them off. So what happened?
Yeah. And it wasn't too terribly long after that they moved out of there. I think 5 or 6 years ago. 5 or 6 years after that, because Chris, a few years later, I joined the Army. Chris joined the Army, and his dad was retired Army, and they sold the land and moved to New Mexico. But I don't think that had anything to do with that incident. I think, he just wanted to live someplace where the weather was a little better, because he was like me now. He was all stove up and didn't like the cold hurting his bones, but I don't want to leave the Ozarks.
Yeah, Chris is a pretty cool dude. I mean, he doesn't strike me as the type that just makes stuff up. Number one, if it'd just been him, but obviously DA was there too.
Just Ryan said, I know landscape architects would pay thousands for that antique plow. We never went back. We were like, nope, no, not going back. So as far as I know, it's still there.
Well, the three of us even talked about it, and Chris was pretty confident that all things being equal, if we could get back there without worry of getting in trouble with the authorities, he said he was pretty sure he could get us right back to that house if it was still there.
He grew up out there. He lived out there forever.
Yeah,
I spent a lot of time
sure if it was still there.
Better than me. There was a place on Chris's land that they called the Devil's Altar. When they bought that house and moved in, like I said, they had about 40 acres, but there was pastures where they had their horses, and there was a stand of trees, like a grove of trees, right in the middle of the pasture. I mean, you could ride all the way around it. And Chris said, "You want to see something cool?" I'm like, "Yeah." He says, "We call it the Devil's Altar." So we walked out there to that stand of trees, and in the middle of that stand of trees, they were about probably 100 feet wide by about 150 feet long, kind of an oval of trees in the middle of this field. And in the middle of that stand of trees was a clearing with two boulders about the size of, well, I'm trying to figure some unit of measure. I couldn't reach around them. So they were probably 3 or 4 feet across. There was two boulders side by side that were about the same height. And there was a chunk of flat rock, like river rock, about 8 feet across and about 3 feet wide, just balanced perfectly on both of them. It looked like an altar out there in the middle of the woods. They called it the Devil's Altar because nobody knew how it got there. And even the people they bought the land from, they were like, I don't know how the hell that got there. It's been there as long as we can remember.
I've got an encounter from South Carolina from one of our members in chat, if you want me to read it.
Dude, by all means, read it.
All right. He just wants me to mention his first name, not his full name. But you may remember this, because I think I sent it on to you after I read it. All right, this is from Jason. It says, "Good morning, DA gave me your email address. I had this encounter with a dogman, yes, plural, in the winter of 2002, possibly 2003. Some friends and I had loaded up my 93 Ford Explorer with supplies to go and have a campfire and pass the time and do teenage things. I was a senior in high school at the time, and we were going to a spot that I'd used before by Lake Robinson. And this, like I said, this is in South Carolina. I had made up a fire circle and dragged a couple of logs around it. This was an area that was fairly remote. There were houses on the other side of the lake, but nothing that was really close, and nothing really on that side of the lake. It was down a dirt road, and the trees along the first part had been logged out of the area. And he was taking his friends back there, and it was well back into a thick pine forested area. It was already dark when they set out, and they'd planned to be there and light the fire under the beams of the headlights of the vehicle before settling in. They were riding down a dirt road towards the pine trees, which stood thick and close on each side of the road. So, like it was a narrow road, and there was trees on both sides of the road. My girlfriend at the time,
Like a little cave, how it was like a freaking
yeah,
tunnel.
exactly. That's how I envisioned it. It was just like the trees almost make a tunnel on both sides of the road. My girlfriend at the time commented on how the woods looked really spooky as we were approaching them, and she had some concern, but brushed aside and said that he'd been in these woods multiple times. However, as we slid under the canopy, I did feel that something was different, but being young and flushed with testosterone poisoning, I ignored it. The site was a good ways into the pine forest, and as we crept along at no more than 25 miles an hour, because of the conditions of the road, I kept thinking I saw large shapes moving through the trees, but I shrugged it off as tricks of the light from my headlights. I continued to calm my girlfriend because she kept saying or stating how something didn't feel right. My friends in the back began picking at her. I didn't mention the shapes that I saw, and I didn't mention the shapes that I saw. It was dark under the canopy, not a Stygian darkness, but my headlights didn't illuminate very far in the woods on either side. The dirt road did show up fairly well in the moonlight that shined down through the sliver. This is small text on my phone, so bear with me. Through the sliver made by the road and the canopy overhead. I was approaching the spot where I needed to turn off, and my focus shifted to spotting the turnoff. I spotted the turnoff, and we had only gotten about 20 or 30 feet off the road when I slammed on the brakes and asked what that was ahead of us. I couldn't continue to deny the large shapes running through the trees anymore, as something had just ran across the track. I was easing down just past the range of my headlights. It was very large, but moving extremely quickly. My friend in the back said it looked like a dog from what he had seen. I was just preparing to let off the gas when the creature loped back into the beam of my headlights. Cold dread seized my soul and suddenly strangled the words my friends were speaking. Strangled the words from my friend who was speaking. Showed him sharing that sentiment. I heard whimpers, but couldn't tell you what any one of the girls were saying in the car that were making. Basically, they were just making sounds. He was hearing the sounds, but he wasn't registering to him what they were saying. Honestly, it could have been any one of us that was making the sounds. This creature was clearly canid, yet grotesque. Dark fur, covered and heavily muscled, yet lanky. Its eyes shone with a strange luminosity in my headlights, a bright reddish gold color. I had grown up around large dogs. My uncle bred huskies, so I was familiar with the large canines, but this thing dwarfed the largest dog I had ever encountered. If it had wanted to, or it could have come and laid its head down on the hood of my Explorer. So imagine standing up, it could have walked over and bent over and laid its head down on the Explorer. That's how tall it was. The thing that jolted me out of my terror, the terror that was gripping me, though, was when it began moving towards my vehicle. It didn't move like a dog. It was move like any dog that I was accustomed to being around. It was graceful, but wrong. I could clearly see that instead of paws, it very clearly had hands tipped with claws. I'm a very large man, and at the time, I was 6'4" and around 290. Yes, I played football. My hands are very large, 9 inches from the tip of my middle finger to the base of my palm. Yet the creature's hands looked much larger than mine. Noticing this feature jarred me out of the terror gripping me and put me in. And I put my car in reverse to get us the hell out of there. I would have sworn nothing could have made me more scared right until I turned behind us as I was backing my car up and saw a pair of bright red eyes through the passenger window, maybe 10 to 15 feet from the side of my car. They were illuminated by the glow of my headlights, and this creature's eyes were hovering near the top of my passenger side window. I would have avoided my bowels if I had not just used the bathroom right before my friends had arrived. I slammed on the gas. Fortunately, it was a straight shot back to the main road. My girlfriend started screaming almost as soon as I felt the pine needles changing to hard packed dirt under my tires. It's coming for us. I whipped my head around and saw that the creature was running towards my vehicle. It had risen up onto its back legs and was running towards us inhumanly swiftly. It had cut the distance from 150 to 175 feet down to 50 in seconds. I also saw, much to my continued horror, 2 more sets of red eyes and at least one more dark shape in the woods on either side of my car, where my car had just been. It's a miracle it didn't strip my transmission of all its gears. That's not the rest of the I remember when he sent me the rest of the story. Basically, they drove back into town and they just kind of sat there for a while and kind of had an after action report, so to speak, and kind of discussed it. And but it's a pretty scary encounter. You drive into a area of the woods like that, expecting to just go out and have a nice campfire, and you're kind of in a enclosed area basically. And for lack of a better term, they were pretty much surrounded. One in the front and one on each side. That's what it sounds like.
Oh, I need to go back down to Joe Bald with my DSLR camera, because over there where we got when Steve and I originally caught that thing leaning up behind the tree.
Yeah,
suppose one of the bigger trees right there by it has claw marks on the side of the tree about 50 feet up. But I got to take my telephoto because my big ass ain't climbing.
I don't think any of us will be climbing.
Kevin Bode says the Spirit of the Forest in October. It'll be in Salina at the fairgrounds this year. Robbie and I will both be there for that.
Yep. We shall.
And Russell Accord's going to be there.
Yep. Wayne will be there. Wayne Tothrow.
Dude, I like Wayne a lot.
Yep. Was it first Saturday show in June?
I think so.
Yep.
Reach out to him, find out, make sure what that's the day they wanted to do, and then we'll get that booked.
Pretty sure that's what Tiffany had said. So I'll check on that right now.
Nightly 45 says bring a cherry picker there to get that high. Good luck getting a cherry picker back there because it's some very broken terrain. I'm going to go out there with my telephoto lens and see if I can get some zoomed up images of it. But supposedly this old boy said that he was doing just that, scanning around with his telephoto lens and found claw marks on one of the trees right there by where I had where we cut that on video. I wouldn't say we had an encounter because we didn't see it. We didn't see it for over a year. Rock said, yeah, I'll also be at the one here in Springfield in October.
I just sent you something in the co-host chat that Hillary sent.
Oh, okay.
I think that's the one you were asking about.
Let me check. Oh, okay. Yeah, I will read that here in a bit. That'll take me out of action for a few minutes while I read that. But I want to dig into that. I think that'd be a good one maybe for us to do a show about if I can get some more information on it. Sonia says she has to go. Says, have a great night, everyone. Remember Miss Lene in your prayers. Absolutely. Keep Miss Lene in your prayers. She is home from the hospital now and doing a lot better, but she's still really tired. Said she hopes to be back with us pretty soon, but she's just still kind of getting her energy and her strength back. So y'all keep her in her prayers, in your prayers, and hopefully she'll be back with us soon. Good night, Sonia. Thank you for being
Hi,
here.
Tanya.
Well, originally the topic for tonight was going to be, are the sightings on the increase? And I think they definitely are. And I don't think it's just more people feeling comfortable coming forward. And I also don't think it's just because people now carry cell phones everywhere. I think we're getting more frequency of appearances. And I think they're getting closer to settlement, to civilization. Now, I took a report not too long ago. I was talking to some guys at the store. I don't know if I can really give them a whole lot of credibility, because there are a couple of high school students that reeked of marijuana, but not high school, college students that smelled like they'd been partaking in the parking lot when I ran into them. But I just kind of got a conversation. I was wearing a Bigfoot T-shirt, and one of them said something about, are you into Bigfoot? And I said, yeah, all kinds of stuff. And they apparently live. You remember I showed you where the house we lived in temporarily over by campus?
Yeah.
They lived a few blocks from there, over closer to the park. There's a park over there called Phelps Grove Park. And they said that they have a place over there by that. And one night they were sitting on the porch, and they didn't say whether or not they were smoking or not, but they said they were out on the front porch. They might have been drinking. I don't know. They're high school, they're college students, so either one's entirely possible. But they both claim they saw a werewolf, a full-blown werewolf. They said it was walking like through people's yards, staying in the bushes. And when it realized that they had seen it, it went between two houses and into somebody's backyard. I said, what'd you guys do? They said, we went in the damn house and locked the door. So I don't know if they were smoking something and saw something, but they both seemed pretty scared. So I think they saw something. I just don't know.
Well,
what it was. They said it looked like a full-blown werewolf.
I mean, unless the devil's lettuce, or the said devil's lettuce in question, was laced with something, that's not typical side effects of smoking that. I mean, and usually, I don't know what your experience has been, but my experience dealing with people smoking the ganja, the reefer, whatever you want to call it, it does. I mean, it just usually mellows them out. So if somebody was high on marijuana and they got freaked out about something, chances are, in my opinion, it might actually be something, because that usually takes you down. Not, I mean, if they smoking the meth and freaked out over something,
they both had all their teeth and weren't covered in sores. So these guys didn't look like meth heads.
Yeah.
They were definitely one of your average tweakers. These guys were both students.
I would lean more heavily to a hallucination or seeing something and exaggerating what they actually saw to that more so than pot. I mean,
well, I asked them, some pointed questions. I'm like, okay, you sure it wasn't just a dog? They're like, dude, it was on two legs the entire time we saw it. And they told me the area where it was at. And guess what? There are drainage tunnels in that area. I went over there and looked. There are drainage tunnels in that area that underground.
You remember what Leon told us? He thinks that is a main source of
how they get around without being seen.
How they get around without being seen over the pond.
Well, if their story is to be believed, and I give it some credibility, I think they saw something. I can't say for sure they saw a dog man or whatever, but they described it as looking like a werewolf. That neither of them had ever heard the term dog man. But I asked him, was it like a dog man? They're like, what's a dog man? And they said it would look like a werewolf. I said, like Van Helsing werewolf, or the Howling or anything like that. They said, no, it just looked like a big dog on two legs, but it was constantly on two legs. It never dropped down to all fours. And it said it once, one of them, he said, we were just sitting there staring at it, not saying anything. He said, I don't know if we knocked over a bottle or something. We made a noise and it turned and looked right at us. And once it realized we saw it, it went between two houses and over a privacy fence.
What does that remind you of, though? Think about your encounter in LBL.
Yeah. It was an upright dog. It looked like an upright dog. It didn't look like a power lifter on two legs. It looked like a dog standing up.
As standing there, just minding his own business, and it realized you saw it, and what it do? Turn around and DF the hell.
They said it went back. It went between the two houses kind of quickly, and just kind of went over the fence in a single bound.
See, that's what makes me think that. That's what makes me think that what people are like to call a dogman, and something like what you got loose in the LBL, are two totally different things.
If that is a werewolf or a dogman, whatever term you want to use, if their story is legit, and I kind of, like I said, I believe they saw something. I don't know exactly what it was. They were both clearly shook up about it. So whatever they saw was in the middle of town. I mean, nowhere near a city limit.
But that's what I'm saying. I think that whatever, like what you saw, that's not a werewolf. That's not, that's not something.
That's an upright canid.
Yeah. But what attacked and killed these folks in the LBL is not what you saw either.
I don't think so. I don't think it was the same thing.
What Tyler and me and Johnny and Greg all saw in the LBL was not what you saw, because what we saw was stalking us. What me and Jessica dealt with up there that night in Georgia was not.
What we saw in Joe Bolt was stalking us.
Exactly. That was my next one. But and we've said it so many times before. You hear people talk about, like your encounter. He was just standing there, and then it noticed we were watching him, and it took off. And then other people were like, "Oh my God, we were so lucky to get out of there." The guy you tell the story about where his dog was going nuts at the top of the steps. He goes around and looks, and
it's halfway through the freaking doggy door
with the big raccoon hands coming at him. I mean, that's not what you saw in the LBL.
Right.
That's a predator. What you saw was just an animal, like you said, an upright canid that was just out there doing what it does. Not that we know what that is.
Lead Laced Our Anarchy says, could some of these be government-created hybrid cryptids? Maybe. I won't say no. I mean, we know for a fact our government has tried to weaponize other animals, including whales, dolphins, wolves.
Think about the article that Doc talked about that a couple of years ago when we did that show, me, you, and him, and he talked about that article where they supposedly released the enhanced dogmen, as they call it, or whatever they called them, to breed with the wild population. So maybe stuff like what you were seeing comes from some of that kind of stuff.
It would not shock me to find out our government has experimented on those things. I don't believe for a second that they created them, but they are certainly above exploiting them. Just Ryan says, do dogs attract bipedal cryptids in general? I know a lot of stories where people have had dogs attacked and killed by Bigfoot because apparently they don't like barky dogs. Dogs that bark a lot tend to get a lot of attention from these things. Dogs that get quiet and go under the porch generally get left alone. So my guess is a dog that's either coming after them or won't shut up is probably either going to be on the menu or get killed.
Well, that would be my guess. The Boggy Creek story, the two hound dogs that the thing killed. He said he clearly talked about them out there barking. He heard them barking, and then all of a sudden they weren't barking anymore. And he went back out the next day, and it killed both his dogs. And he said that's what ticked him off more than anything was, those are
little Patty wanted to know what we could tell her about the Kushtaka. I don't know a whole lot about the Kushtaka, but it's an Alaskan Native American legend. It's a Bigfoot type creature, but they say it's like a mixture between a man and a giant otter.
Yeah,
but that it's semi-aquatic and will take people. So
a lot of people call it the Otter Man.
Is a dangerous cryptid.
Yeah, a lot of people call it the Otter Man.
The Otter Man.
And a lot of people say it's kind of a shapeshifter, that it can, or a mimic, that it can mimic people's voices, that it can appear as, like if you're out there with different people, it can appear as one of your companions. So you don't necessarily know if who you're talking to is who they're supposed to be or the Kushtaka.
I'm going to say something that might be a little controversial with some people, especially a few other researchers. But you've heard of the what creepypasta of the rake, and people are reporting seeing them in the woods. And originally started out as a creepypasta, but to be completely honest, I think the rake is a variant of the Wendigo. Because in classic Algonquin legends, the Wendigo does not have the skull face of a deer with the antlers. That has been reported, but a true Wendigo is pale skinned, no hair, very gaunt, very thin, very much like they describe a pale crawler.
Yeah.
Richard Reed, has an interesting comment. He said, I believe that both Bigfoot and Dogman are creations of fallen angels, and they're powerful animals and can evade all traps and cameras. Dude, that is entirely possible. I mean, I'm not going to say it's not. I mean, I personally, I lean more toward them being flesh and blood creatures, and I think they've been around for a very long time. But for instance, you can see Bigfoot and Dogman type creatures in the margins of the Piri-Reis map. The Piri-Reis map. I'm sorry, I keep saying that wrong. The Piri-Reis map is a map of Antarctica without ice on it. They showed up there. The Greeks and the Romans both described creatures they referred to as the cynocephali, and that was 2,000 years ago. They said they fought both. Both the Greeks and the Romans reported fighting these creatures, these cynocephali creatures, in the Indus Valley in India and in northern Africa. So the reports of these Dogman and Bigfoot type creatures go back hundreds, if not thousands, of years. So whether or not their origin is, some people think they're Nephilim, and again, I'm not going to say they're not, but I think that there's a more terrestrial explanation. I think that they're the reason that the uncanny valley exists. I think they're the reason that hardwired into the human brain is the innate fear of something most like us in the dark. Because I think these are the things that hunted us before we developed fire and civilization, back when man was definitely not the top of the food chain. Not that I think we are now, but because of our advanced technology, better weapons, I think we're much better position to defend ourselves from these type of creatures. And one-on-one, yeah, you're probably going to lose. But the thing about it is with these things getting bolder, it's not going to be one-on-one. They're going to take somebody, and 60 people are going to show up with firearms and go after the thing. So I think there's going to be a point where something happens that they can't cover up anymore. The government deny it.
And I understand what you're saying, Richard. But what you're saying is based on what we as the general public know. We don't know. If I had to guess on it, I'd say our governments, and when I say governments, I mean major governments of the world, probably already have quite a few of them in captivity that they've already caught. So yes, we as the general public haven't been able to, but I would not go so far as to say we ain't no closer than we have been in 300 years. I'm pretty sure that that's already happened. And the reason I say that and can say it with such confidence is you got things like the Army Field Manual saying that Bigfoot was something that you could see out in the Pacific Northwest. The soft disclosures we've had of, different states saying, it's illegal to kill near human chimeras, or offering bounties on specimens brought in. There's just so many things out there that our governments have just softly released off.
This is a great example of that. This map shows locations across the United States, just the U.S., and it looks like a little bit in Canada, where giant skeletons have been unearthed and turned over to the Smithsonian or the government. Yet this is not public knowledge. They don't admit it. This is something I found through pretty heavy digging. This is locations where giant non-human skeletons have been found all across the U.S. And every time they're either turned over to like conservation or a university or the Smithsonian. And once the Smithsonian gets their hands on these things, they're gone. And they don't talk about them. They don't admit they're there. Lovelock Cave is the perfect example because they still have the receipts where they were signed over to the Smithsonian. The Smithsonian claims they don't exist. But there are pictures and receipts of the giant of Lovelock Cave. But this is just the U.S. This isn't around the world. This is just the lower 48 United States, where they have unearthed giant skeletons and they vanished. So yeah, our government is definitely hiding.
Yeah. So that's what I say. Based on what just the general public knows, yeah, it on the surface it does appear that we're no closer now than we were, but that's because they keep us over here and don't let us know what's going on over here.
Mm-hmm.
And like Casey said, Abraham Lincoln talked about the giants being found all over the United States, but you don't hear that kind of stuff anymore. Teddy Roosevelt, the things that he said, you just think our government's not going to tell us everything that, they don't want us,
Great map. I'm sure you know what one this one is, Robbie.
Oh, when it shows up, our overlay stuff.
Yeah, this is the comparison map up top, right up here. These are the missing 411 cases and clusters where you see, color codes like this and like this. These are what's known as clusters, where large numbers of people have all gone missing in the same area. And the map beneath it is the map of known cave systems in the United States. And according to the most recent U.S. Geological Survey, Mammoth Cave, which was discovered right about here, goes all the way up into Maine. And the most recent belief is that it runs all the way over here to Carlsbad, New Mexico. And right here, it looks like it connects over into the caves in Missouri. And Missouri's riddled with caves. Oh, the cave at Silver Dollar City? Flooded. The whole thing's underwater.
Creature from Black Lake was a pretty cool movie. I enjoyed that. It was an older one, but was that in the 70s? I think that one was made, right, DA?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good movie too.
Yeah.
Trying to see if I had any. I've got some videos, but they're all too big to share. Can't upload them because they're like 1.6 gig or something like that. Northwood says he deals with a different kind of cluster at work. Dude, I think I've worked for a couple departments like that. They were a cluster something, all right. Nightly 45 says Theodore Roosevelt supposedly had a partner that was killed by Bigfoot. The Bauman incident, I believe, is what you're talking about. And we firmly believe that Roosevelt was Bauman. Because that story appeared in his book, The Wilderness Hunter. And at the time, Teddy was traveling the West as a big game hunter. As before he went into politics is when he released that book. And Bauman and his partner went up into the mountains of Montana to go trapping, and his partner was killed by a Bigfoot. And the reason why we were convinced that that's Bauman, and that Bauman is Teddy Roosevelt, is because, one, Bauman was never given a first name. Two, nobody ever came forward when the president of the United States released a book with this incident and said, yeah, that's me. Because that would happen. If you appeared in a book the president of the United States wrote, you'd be telling all your buddies, yeah, that was me. That happened to me. If nothing else, guys in bars would be trying to claim that as stories, but nobody ever came forward claiming to be Bauman. Bauman was never given a first name. And Teddy Roosevelt, when he was in college, I believe he went to, I think it was Harvard. He was on the rowing team, what they call sculling team, those little narrow ass canoes that they race on the rivers. a race on lakes and rivers. He was on the sculling team, and he was the front man in the boat, incidentally called a bowman. That was his position on the team. He was the bowman. I firmly believe Roosevelt was bowman.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the time that book was published, he wasn't president yet. He still had political aspirations. The last thing you want to do is come forward and say, yep, I saw a monster in the woods, especially if you're running for public office. As even back then, people would be like, sure you did. Okay, take your meds. Go back to the crazy house. So I truly believe that Teddy Roosevelt was bowman. And look, flash forward, what's one of the first things Teddy did? Help create the national park system. And when you look at the fact that there are 88 million acres, 88.5 million acres of national park land, and that's not counting public use areas, wildlife management areas, state parks. It doesn't count any of that. It doesn't count Bureau of Land Management. It doesn't count areas that are set aside like reservations. But when you take all of that into account and everything that has been set aside and not developed, it equals, and this is just North America alone. United States alone. It equals out to be over 1 billion, and yes, billion with a B, over 1 billion acres of land that's left as habitat. So, but the thing is most people who live in cities don't realize just how much wild land is still left out there. I'm just talking about the state of Alaska right now. State of Alaska is so big that if you could explore 1 square mile a day, 1 square mile, that's a lot of land to cover on foot. If you could explore all of it, like see every inch of it, 1 square mile a day, it would still take you over 120 years to explore the entire state.
And back to the 88 million acres, not counting the other stuff, you could hide whole countries on this earth that inside that type of acreage.
Yeah, when you look at most of Europe, those countries are smaller than some of our states.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how many European countries could you fit inside of Montana?
A lot.
Or
Texas.
Or Texas. (1945) says a lot of land that's not being hunted, perfect for Bigfoot and Dogman. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
It is completely believable that there's plenty of habitat for these things to live in. I mean, if you looked at just here in Missouri and Arkansas at the Mark Twain National Forest and the Ozark National Forest, those two butt right up against each other. Just those two alone are over 5 million acres. Just those two. And it basically covers from just south of St. Louis to the middle of Arkansas. Just Ryan said sound died. Anybody else? I don't know. Say something, Robbie.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you just fine. Anybody else? Anybody else not hear the sound? Just a guy says, DA, half the country is quote unquote undeveloped land. The other half is developed land. 5% of the country is urban city. Yeah. But the bulk of the population in the U.S. live in those big metropolitan areas.
Yep.
And when people that have, one of the guys I was in the Army with, for example, went to basic training with him. He was from New York City and he had never been out of the city. And he was like picking crap up and asking me what it was. I'm like, dude, that thing will bite you and kill you. Quit picking crap up. This isn't the Bronx petting zoo out here. Shit out here will kill you. Don't pick that up. It's a freaking copperhead. Leave it alone. Shadow Gypsy said it went out, but it came right back. That's good. I didn't even notice we'd lost it. Callaway says, how much land in the United States is blocked off from the public? Like I'm saying, dude, most of national parks, you can't get into all of it. There's a small percentage of national parks land. So I would guess it would be in the hundreds of millions of acres that we're still not allowed at full access to. And even like in the case of national parks, we're only allowed, access to part of it. And around here, if you want to hunt conservation land, you've got to get permission. Same thing with the national forests. You can hunt them, but you've got to jump through hoops to do it. Billy Mitchum says he can hear us both. 5 by 5. Little Patty says, I believe there are Bigfoot in our Confederate State Park right outside my little town, 130 acres of forest woods. The thing is you really, all you've got to ask yourself is there habitat? Is there water? Is there areas where they can use for shelter? And is there food? If you can answer yes to those 3 questions, I'd say it's a very good chance that they either live in your area or at least move through it. Because much like big predators like mountain lions and bears, I believe these things have a range. And I think we're starting to be able to kind of predict it out at Table Rock Lake. Maybe we're not 100% spot on yet, but I think we're very close to locking it in. You want activity at Joe Bald? Go when it's cold. But that's a whole different animal over just on the other side of the lake over at Combs Ferry, because we were there during flooding and the height of summer in July. It was hot as hell when we were in there, and we still got a ton of activity. But it's kind of the opposite over at Combs Ferry. Of Joe Bald, I mean. Joe Bald seems like, the cooler months is when we get the most activity over there. Nightly 45 says, how life-changing is it when you have an encounter with a Bigfoot or Dogman? Dude, I'm telling you, it's a paradigm shift. If we had Doc here, you could see that.
Or
when
Steve.
Doc or Steve, when Doc was watching 2 of them closing in on me and Robbie through the thermal, it was a moment that has changed Doc. It's no longer I believe these things are real. It's like thermal doesn't lie. Those 2 things were moving in on you guys. Judy Davis says, yeah, like they denied extraterrestrials, then came clean in a congressional hearing, and people still don't believe. But the problem is most people are very content with their head stuck in the sand. That's just the way of it. You could tell them aliens are coming tomorrow, and they'd be like, okay. They don't want to know. They don't care.
And somebody said something earlier about us not being able to get proof or evidence or anything like that. Here is the brass tacks of this, and DA and Doc and I and Steve have all said this on the show. We've said this privately. We're not, number one, we're not out there to get our 15 minutes of fame and prove anything to anybody. We all know what we believe. If we find something and we happen to grab something or get something, we're going to share it on the show. No problem with that. But we're not out there to do that for 2 reasons. Number one, that's not what we're about, because we're not looking for that. And number 2, it doesn't matter what we bring back. There's always going to be somebody that's going to say, oh, it's fake, or what. You could lead one in on a leash to some of these people and they wouldn't believe it.
Right.
If somebody
so the people who are going to believe will believe, and those who don't want to believe won't, no matter what you tell or show them. Until they walk up and see one for themselves, they're never going to believe it. And Blake Weatherman said DA, when are you guys going out on another expedition? Oddly enough, we would be out probably now. But no, we wouldn't be till this week. But
no,
Doc and Robbie,
this week.
Yeah, it was all this week. Doc and Robbie were planning on being out here, and we were going to be hitting the woods and filming a bunch. But unfortunately, at the last minute, Doc had to cancel because he had obligations with his business with Dark Angel. The guy that was going to be running the business while he was gone got called away on another business matter. So Doc had to cancel at the last minute. But we're going to, as soon as we can get our noggins together, we're going to plan another one, hopefully in the next couple months. So, and even before then, I'm going to get back out. I'm just going to make sure I don't go alone. Casey says, I live right behind a 3,500 acre park. You guarantee that's a good habitat for them. Here's a question. Winclin Ken says, DA or Robbie, have you heard of Tuskegee National Forest in Alabama and Bigfoot and Dogman sighting there? Robbie's been there.
Yep.
You want to field that one?
That's actually, if those of you who've been in the chat for a while know that's I go down to Anniston for what's the name? It left me. The name of that installation that I go do the training at for Department of Homeland Security is but it's in Anniston, Alabama. Greg, if either Ogles or House, either one's in the chat, help me out. But anyway, basically it's an old military base that the government has turned into a training facility, and it's right there at it. And there's it's just like you hear all these other bases. They butt these bases up right next to these national forests, and that's why you have a lot of those sightings in places like that. Because these national forests are these big, expansive places for that nobody can go into or have anything to do with, and it's just perfect habitat for these things.
McClellan?
That's yeah, maybe we talked about it before, but I can't remember if McClellan was it or anyway. It's the they've got the Cobra facility down there where you go in and they take you in on some of the training and take you into some hot stuff, which is you have to wear.
Is it the Center for Domestic Preparedness?
That's it. Center for Domestic Preparedness.
CDP in Anniston.
Yep.
Just had to consult the Googles.
But yeah, and it's one of those places you get on the bus in the morning, at dark 30, and they're driving you over to another place and you get out on the road on these buses and you look and there's just nothing but woods all the way around, and you're just what's out there?
But there are a lot of sightings on military bases.
Mm-hmm.
Hell, there have been dozens of sightings on Fort Leonard Wood.
Well, the last class I was at, I can't remember where the guy was from, but we kind of got that facility is down there. There's law enforcement, there's fire, EMS, doctors, nurses. It runs the scope of people who are down. That's not just training for one specific discipline. I mean, there's people down there from all walks of life doing training. But most of the classes I go to are specifically law enforcement, fire, EMS. But this guy was I want to say he was from California somewhere. And we got to talking, and I said something about the show. And he said, so what do y'all talk about? And I start telling him, what we talk about on the show. Because I think it was the day I think it was a Wednesday, and we were going to try to do the show that night, because he had asked if I wanted to go into town. I said, no, I can't. I got to do a show tonight. And he's like, show? And so I started talking to him about it, and he was like, so like in the areas like we're in right now? I said, oh yeah, yeah. I said all these old bases and stuff like that, they build them on right up next to these national forests. And I got into our Teddy Roosevelt theory, and he was just like, man, I never thought about stuff like that, but it makes sense. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot.
How far is that from where you and Jessica had that encounter?
Oh, that's a long way from there. Because
the encounter in Georgia. That's right. I'm thinking of a different state.
We were in North Georgia. Yeah, North Georgia. That's probably 2.5-ish hours from where Jessica and I was. I mean, as far as they would travel, probably not that far, but now that's probably not far from Greg. So some of the house, I went down to Greg Ogle's house when I was down there before the last time I was down there, and it took me about an hour hour and a half to get to Greg Ogle's house from there. But to Greg's house, I don't think it's that far. I think he lives pretty close to Anniston.
A.R. Harris says Dugway proving grounds in Utah have sightings quite frequently too. I've heard of that. I've heard a lot of sightings, especially on cameras out on Dugway. Wendell says the Alabama Bigfoot Conference is June 6th at Fort McClellan in Anniston. I'd like to have been able to go to that one, but I just don't have the money right now. Dude, it is after 10 already. Holy crap. Tonight has flown by. Robbie, I think I lost your audio. Yep, we've lost your audio. Yep, I don't hear a thing. All right, Robbie will be right back. He's got the accursed satellite has zapped his audio again. Robbie will be right back. Wendell says Greg House is 2 hours away from Anniston. I want to do some investigating work down that way. I want to go and hang out with Greg. Thank you, Harold. Appreciate it. Yeah, Ben, we do have word from Miss Lene. She's home. She's doing a lot better. Still really tired. Hopefully she'll be back with us soon, but she is home. And we're all very happy about that. So y'all keep her in your prayers. Hopefully she'll be back with us soon. Trying to think. Something else I was going to say, and I'm completely losing my train of thought. KC says, "Oh, KC and someone else are talking about when they're in the military. I was in an 88 too, KC, but I was at Leonard Wood for basic. I didn't go to Fort McClellan." Catherine Carpenter says, "I live on 300 acres with lots of freshwater springs and caves. Pump my water in from the spring. Get scary." I would imagine so. He made it.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
It took forever for it to even close. It just kept saying not responding, and it just kept spinning. I'm like,
Cajun says, "What was your MOS, DA?" My MOS doesn't exist anymore. It was 97 Golf signal security. Yeah, you can carry the equipment we used to use in your pocket now, but that MOS got phased out because there's just no call for it anymore. I mean, you can literally carry the equipment we needed to be brought in by a helicopter. You can carry it in your backpack. Little Patty says September 19th and 20th in Richmond, Missouri, Crossing Realms Conference. Patty, send me some information on that. I'm not sure how far we are from Richmond, but if that's not too far away, I wouldn't mind maybe seeing about going to that. That could be fun. Here we go. A.R. Harris says, "Hey, DA, saw something about having sightings at Luke Air Force Base in the Phoenix area. The base is 5 miles from where I live." Yeah, there's been a lot of sightings down in that area. In fact, not too terribly far from you, there are tremendous amount of sightings in what they call the Mogollon monster up on the Mogollon Rim, and that's if I remember correctly, that's not too far as the crow flies. And there's a lot of reservations in that area where there's sightings as well. But yeah, Arizona, yeah. Again, I firmly believe they're using the caves, especially in the heat of the day. Arizona is one of those places that does have a serious amount of sightings. In fact, we watched a video from there. If I could see if I could find it again, where some guys were out on the Mogollon Rim and they had a big speaker and they blasted the Ohio Howl. And first couple times they played it, nothing happened. And then they got a pissed off response from very close by, and the video ended with them running for their vehicle. They were out of there. Wendell says, DA, you come to Annis and I'll take you somewhere you'd like. Dude, I'd be down like 4 flat tires. I want to get out that way hopefully soon. Steve says, Richmond isn't too far from Lexington. That's only about an hour and a half drive, I think. Maybe a little farther, maybe 2 hours. Yeah, that ain't far at all. Yeah, we've gone to Lexington before. It's really not that far. I'm hoping, keep my fingers crossed, we're thinking about trading our car in. It's starting to get quite a few miles on it. We're thinking about trading it in, and I think this time we're going to get a truck. And that'll give me a lot more room to carry books and stuff to conventions like that. Not that I have anything against our little Rogue. It's a great car. It just doesn't have jack for cargo space. Yeah, just Ryan, hey, the Superstition Mountains folks go missing all the time. There's a headless valley in the Superstitions where they've found people, found the body, never found the heads. And they're not cut off. They've been torn off. Casey says I have a bad habit of laughing at people when they yell in my face. Yeah, I don't laugh, but I smile when I'm nervous. And that got me to doing a lot of push-ups in basic. Winclan Ken says, DA and Robbie come down to Lower Alabama too and visit me in Flat Rock if you come to Alabama. Dude, I would love to. Yeah, definitely. Seeing if there's any other. Air Harris says, yeah, I deer hunt around the rim. If you're going to be out on the Mogollon Rim, dude, be careful. From what I hear, that is a pretty woolly area. Robert D says, if that's around Flagstaff, Arizona, it's about 100 miles north of Phoenix. I've been to Flagstaff, but I was a kid, so I don't know exactly where Flagstaff is at, but I think it sounds right that it's in that area. Wendell says, DA, get a Honda Element like I have. I think I'm going to either get a bigger SUV like a Dodge Durango or something, or just a 4-door truck. Something with 4-wheel drive. Mainly because some of the places I want to get to, my little Rogue won't make it. I'm going to be needing a 4-wheel drive to get into some of these places. Robbie's got a 4-wheel drive, but unfortunately he lives 12 hours away. So, and Doc's 10. So that's why it's so tough for us to all get together.
Yep.
Doc's 10 in the other direction. Robbie's east and Doc's west. Miriam says Flagstaff's near the Grand Canyon. Okay. But we are after the 2-hour mark. Catherine, I've been into Kentucky and LBL and a couple of other places, and I do want to get back because that's a great area to go. But we are after the 2-hour mark. We're going to go ahead and start winding things down. I'm going to give some shout outs real quick to our affiliates. Y'all make sure you check out Scallywag Tactical. Best blades in the business. Those guys are awesome. They got fantastic knives at good prices. And if you use discount code DARoberts10, you'll get 10% off your entire order. And they've got some fantastic blades. Pretty much your all occasion one-stop knife shop. So definitely check out Scallywag Tactical. Again, I'll throw up the discount code so y'all can see it. Let me drag that off our faces. But use the discount code DARoberts10 and get 10% off your entire order. Fantastic stuff. Check out Ken Brock at brockblades.com. Ken makes custom knives. His are made to order, made by hand in the forge. Scallywag's blades are awesome blades. But you buy two gunner's mates, they're identical. But Ken's blades, no two are alike. So check out brockblades.com. Don't forget to check out little old Doc over at darkangelmedical.com. Best med kits in the business. I trusted my life to him in uniform, and I continue to do so. In fact, when we went to the range yesterday, we had 3 kits with us. Get you a Dark Angel kit, learn how to use it, because the life you save may very well be your own. Check them out and use discount code cryptid20 for 20% off your entire order. And our newest group in there, and I don't have anything set up where I could just pop it up, but I do. I have a card handy. Check out sigwo.com. Sigwo, custom firearms. They have pretty much everything you could possibly need. They do custom guns. They do suppressors, custom builds, you name it. In fact, they're going to be building Codename Wild Hunt uppers and lowers. So if you want to check them out, check out sigwo.com and tell them we sent you. My buddy Cody is the manager over there. Let him know we sent you, and tell him we need to check it out. So sigwo.com. Again, great company, and we try to support not just local businesses, but veteran owned and first responder owned. So that's kind of our thing, because every one of us on the show has either been a first responder, is a first responder, or been in the military. So it's kind of a big deal to us to support our veterans and first responders. And having said that, I want to start winding things down by discussing the 22 a day foundation. We lose 22 veterans a day to suicide, and that is 22 too many. So reach out and check on your friends and family that are veterans, and a big thank you to all the veterans that are out there. My hat's off to every one of you guys. Thank you guys so much for your service. Same with all the first responders out there. No matter how you serve, what uniform you wore, thank you for your service. We don't appreciate those folks enough, and the VA is not doing nearly enough for our soldiers who've returned home. So reach out, shoot them a text, give them a phone call, let them know you're thinking about them, because at least 22 times a day, the hard days are winning, and let's not let the hard days win. Let's reach out, let them know we're caring about them, let them know we're thinking about them, let them know they've got a place to go, a shoulder to lean on, and let them know that they're not alone. Again, don't let the hard days win, folks, because at least 22 times a day they are winning. And let's get that number down to 0. So, folks, we are going to close this rascal out. It's 10:18, 11:18 for Robbie. We're gonna close this rascal out with a toast. And you know what, Robbie? How about you lead us in the toast tonight?
Raise your glass, whatever you got. And as DA likes to say, this is not just about leaving the bar at night and saying goodbye to friends that you're seeing at the bar. It's about saying goodbye to those who you're not going to see again for a while, maybe, or hopefully you will. Sing along with me or speak along with me. But since it fell into my lot that I should rise and you should not, I'll gently rise and softly call, good night and joy be to you all. Slanja.
Slanja Ma. Good night, everyone.
Thank you for joining us. Catch us again Wednesdays and Saturdays on DAExMachiNation. A special thanks to all our channel members and Patreon supporters. Please make sure to like, share, and subscribe.